Hi everyone and welcome back to a new video on my YouTube channel. From the 7th of October until the 15th I played in a 9-round over-the-board chess tournament on the sunny island of Mallorca in Spain. And in this tournament I played against people ranging from 1400 all the way up to 2200. And in these recaps I will share my thoughts on the games and try to go over what went right and what went wrong, so that you can all learn from my mistakes and become better chess players for it. Also, I want to give you an update on my current health situation. As you probably have noticed, I didn't upload any longer videos recently, and this is because I was recovering from a functional neurological disorder. And this is something I was diagnosed with about 2 years ago. And in short, this means that I sometimes lose control over my arms and legs, making me unable to control them. About a year ago, I was paralyzed in my right arm and leg, and this took about 3 months for it to heal. Luckily, this time I only lost control over my right arm for about 2 weeks. And after that, I was ready to get back into chess, resulting me in traveling across Europe from the Netherlands, where I live, to play in the Calvia Amateur Open. Well, thanks in advance for watching the recap, and if you like the content, consider subscribing so you can follow my videos on a weekly basis. Now, let's get right into the first recap. For the first game of the tournament, I was paired against a player that had a significantly higher rating than me. I played one of the higher seeds of the tournament, which was a Romanian player called Daniel Ristodorescu. And I apologize in advance if I completely butchered that name, but I have no clue how to pronounce it. He had a rating of about 2134, which is one of the highest I've ever played over the board. And he does know his way around the chessboard, so to speak. As you will see, he surprised me pretty early, but I managed to get a pretty good position anyways. It started with the moves e4, e5, and knight c3. And after this I was pretty confident in my knowledge of the Vienna Opening, but he managed to pick out a line that I find really annoying, and although I have seen it multiple times, I never really learned a weapon against it. And the move I'm talking about is the move bishop to b4. And this is less common than developing one of the knights to f6 and c6, and also the a7 to g1 diagonal is, in my opinion, a better place to develop the bishop. But what he's doing made a lot of sense to me, because he wanted to get me out of my comfort zone and create an imbalance, so that the game was less likely to end up becoming drawish with the symmetrical pawn structure and pieces. So now I decided to just develop my bishop to c4, which I usually do in all over the board games. There's also an option to go for g3 and place it on g2, but both options are pretty good in this position. Now, right now he wants to play for d5, and he showed that to me by playing the move knight f6. And knight f6, after this move, we land in a more theoretical position, and d5 is usually the way to go. And I knew this was going to be his plan, and I was considering playing knight f3, but I also thought it was a little risky to allow knight takes e4, with the idea to after knight takes e4 to play d5, forking the bishop and the knight. But this would have been fine, because I would have been able to sacrifice my bishop on f7 before taking on e4. And after that I can take on e5 with check, and also just pick up the knight on e4 afterwards. So knight takes e4 wouldn't have been possible, so I would have been able to play knight f3. But I played d3 instead. And after playing d3, this does allow the move d5, because right now my knight is pinned to the king, so there's no way for me to defend against d5. He didn't play it right away, because he first decided to castle, and right now I could play knight f3, and now my opponent did decide to play d5 to crack open the center and make use of the fact that my knight on c3 is pinned. After this I took on d5. And I have not considered my opponent's next move, because it looks really weird to me and not good at all. It just looks a bit too forcing to be good. And that's an instinct that comes with experience. But after e takes d5, he played the move e4, which the computer also calls an inaccuracy. We are also now out of theory, because there are no master games in this position. There are about 1500 games on lichess in this position, but it's just not good for black. After e4, I saw that after taking, I would have to surrender my extra pawn, because it's not possible to keep this pawn. Because after d takes e4 and knight takes e4, there is no way to settle the pin on c3. So instead of doing anything about it, I just decided to give back my pawn and play the move castles. Now, after he takes my knight on c3 with the knight, and I take with the b pawn, he plays bishop takes c3, and now I could just move my rook to b1, putting more pressure on b7 and making use of the open b file, the semi-open b file. I really thought I must have a small plus here because I was really confident that I was better in this position. One thing is the open b file, but also the fact that the d5 pawn is well protected in the center of the board and taking away a lot of squares for the pieces on the black side. I really was confident that I was better. And it turned out I was plus 1.5 or something, which is really good, but it wasn't as concrete and materialistic as some advantages can be. It's not like I'm up a pawn or something, so I still have to prove that I am up in this position. Right now, I decided to play my first mistake of the game. I played the move queen d3, and queen d3 could have been a good move, but it's just a bit too soon to develop my queen. I could have done this in a way smarter way, because if I didn't play queen d3, but played knight g5 first, I would have threatened some nice sacrifices on e6, but also if I play queen d3 in the next move, this would come with a checkmate threat, and I would be able to take the bishop on c3. So just making more threats instead of making a direct move attacking a bishop was way better in this position. Because after queen d3, you could just move the bishop back to a better square on f6, and the pressure on his position immediately just evaporates. Knight g5 would have been a way for me to get a way more comfortable position, but I did manage to gain back my lead in the next few moves. After bishop f6, I played the move bishop a3, developing my bishop to attack the rook. And after he would move the rook to e8, I thought I would have been a bit better here, because after rook to e8, I can play rook to e1 myself. And right now I have my rooks connected, all my pieces are developed, and he's still undeveloped on the queen side. So I thought I was just a bit better here. So he decided to block bishop a3 with bishop e7, so I couldn't take the rook. But right now I was pretty happy to just repeat moves, because after bishop to b2, I thought, well, if he goes back to f6 with the bishop, I can just move back to a3 and we can make a repetition and perhaps get a draw that way. I would have been really happy to get that draw at this point, because I didn't think I was that much ahead anymore, and just making a repetition against someone that's about 400 points higher rated than me is just a great result. He didn't go for the repetition though. He played the move b6, which I thought was pretty okay. He's trying to develop his light square bishop to add an attacker on d5, which could potentially become weak if I'm not careful. And after this, I calculated the move knight d4, which was pretty good, because after knight d5, which he played in the game, this just looks like a very strong move. But I had queen to g3, pinning the knight to the e5 square, because if he would take the bishop with the knight, I can move my knight attacking the queen, and also simultaneously attack the g7 square with my queen and bishop to threaten a checkmate. And I felt that I had him here because he was thinking for a very long time. But after bishop to f6, and I played bishop to b3, making sure that he can't take my bishop on c4 anymore, I felt that his next move was a big mistake. And he played bishop to b7, which looks like a normal developing move, but it did turn out to be a mistake, but not for the reason I thought it was a mistake. Because after this, he leaves this diagonal, which opens my knight for the f5, but apparently also the e6 square. The move knight e6 in this position, it was on my radar for a few moments, but I actually evaluated it wrong, because I thought it wasn't as good as it turned out to be. After knight to e6, sacrificing the knight, what I had calculated wrong in the end is that after f takes e6 and d takes e6, and now knight f3, sacrificing the knight, because I am attacking it with 2 pieces, so he can't both defend me playing e7 with a discovery and also protect his knight. So I thought he had to sacrifice the knight on f3. And now after I take with the g-pawn and he plays queen e7, I thought I couldn't actually hang on to the pawn on e6. But as it turns out, I could hang on to this pawn pretty easily, and I'm just a pawn up. And also this discovery is still a threat, and the queen is pinned to the e7 square so that the pawn can't move forward. And it takes quite a long time for black to also develop and move his king out of the way, and I would have had a winning position right here. What I evaluated wrong is that I thought that I would have lost this pawn in the long run, and after that I would just have a damaged structure and just a worse endgame. So I should have played that, but I decided to play the move knight f5, which also became available after the bishop moved to b7. And the one move that hangs on in this position, because I'm threatening to take the knight and also have nice x-rays on g7, is the move knight to g6, which he found. And right now the game is way easier for him to play. Also, I felt like I threw away my lead somewhere, which led to me making riskier moves. And this is never a good thing to do. I really wanted to gain back my lead because as a human, it's really annoying if someone takes away the lead from you. You had the game in your hands, but then you somehow lost it and you try to take grasp of it. But after this, I played the move bishop takes f6. And after queen takes f6, I made a mistake in my calculation again. Right now, after queen takes f6, I thought I had to move queen takes c7, threatening to take the bishop and leaving my knight hanging. But he has an in-between move, which I spotted just before making the move queen takes c7, which is bishop to a6, attacking my rook. And my knight is still hanging. I have to move my rook. And afterwards, he can just pick up my knight and he's up a piece. So luckily, I didn't play this. I did see it a bit too late though, because I had already captured on f6, which was not a favorable trade without this tactic. I was forced to play knight e3, defending d5, and now he was the one with the initiative and played knight to f4, threatening to play knight e2, forking my queen and my king. So I had to do something about it. And there's actually 2 things you can do about it. You can move your queen, and also you can move your rook to defend the e2 square so that your queen can stay on g3. What I did was not really accurate. I played the move queen to g4, and this got me into trouble pretty soon after. First he played rook to d8, putting more pressure on d5. But after this I played the stupid move rook to d1, and this takes away a very important square for my queen, because I can now not move to d1 with my queen. He saw this move, which is pretty hard to spot. It's a backwards bishop move, which is the move bishop to c8. And now after I moved to f3, there was a tactic available to him, which was knight h3 check. And now I can't take the knight because I lose my queen. So after king to h1, he can take on f3 and completely ruin my structure. And next to that, the knight on h3, it remains really annoying in this position, because if I ever try to attack it, he can just move to f4 and check me. So I'm kind of stuck in the corner with my king. After this, he applied more pressure with the move rook to d6. And I played c4 to solidify my pawn on d5. And now he played rook to d8, and I redeployed my bishop on c2. And right now he played g6, which I thought was a bit weird, because I thought he would want to keep the option to move his rook from d6 to g6. And because he played g6, I thought I was able to get active with my king with the move king to g2. Now, after he plays the move h5, just taking more space on the king side, I played the move king to g3, taking away the f4 square for the knight. But this got really risky. Also, my next move was just a big mistake, because after rook to f6, I played the move knight to g2. And looking back at this just looks really stupid, because this takes away so many squares for my king to run to, and he's really almost checkmated in this position. After this, he played the move g5, which I found really strong, and this makes it really difficult for me to hang on. I made my final mistake of the game with f4 to try and give my king some air, and also sacrificing a pawn. But this doesn't just sacrifice one pawn, this also sacrifices another pawn after the move h4 and king f3. Now he can take with the knight, giving him all kinds of discoveries if I don't take with the knight. Now after knight takes and rook takes, he can pick up another pawn on c4 and everything becomes really weak. I did play on for some moves. As you can see, these are some of the moves I made, but he played it out really cleanly. I had to give up more pawns. In the end, I had to trade off my bishops, and the pawns on the king side were just way too strong for me to defend. In this rook endgame, he ended up making a checkmate threat on me, and I was unable to defend it without giving up material. So in the end, I decided to resign in this position. And sadly, I wasn't able to win the first game. The second round, I was paired against a weaker opponent, giving me more winning chances perhaps, but I was still kind of proud of the level of chess I was able to play at some moments in the game, mostly the opening and the beginning of the middle game. I want to thank you all very much for watching. It means a lot for me to be able to make these videos again and make some really nice chess content for you. Leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more chess content and tournament recaps. And I hope to see you all in the next video. Bye bye.